Welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking a stack of source material today, specifically an excerpted encyclopedia entry, and we're exploring a timeline that honestly reads less like a historical biography and more like the script for a sprawling, big-budget Hollywood epic.
Yeah, it really does. It's quite the story.
It really is. We are looking at the life of Rehavam Amir. Now, he was actually born Rehavam Zabludovsky. And the mission for our deep dive today is to explore how one single life can encompass, the most dramatic cinematic shifts of the entire 20th century.
Right, because when you examine the timeline of Amir's life, it really is staggering.
Yeah.
I mean, we are looking at a man who transitions from being a frontier school teacher to an MI6 trained paratrooper dropping behind enemy lines.
Which is a huge leap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And eventually he becomes a high-stakes hostage negotiator on the international stage. It's a masterclass in adaptability and leadership and fundamentally in crisis management.
And that adaptability is exactly why this is so relevant to you listening right now. Because whether you are prepping for a massive boardroom negotiation or, navigating a sudden career shift or just trying to manage an unbelievably chaotic week, Rehavam Amir's life offers this incredible blueprint for staying absolutely calm under unimaginable pressure.
Absolutely.
So let's start chronologically. It's 1916. Where does our story actually begin?
So the story begins in Vilnius, Lithuania, which at the time was under German occupation during the First World War. His parents were Malka and Yitzhak Elziezer Zabludovsky. He has a very solid educational foundation early on.
Right. He studies at a Tarbet high school.
Yeah, and then goes on to a teacher's college in Vilnius. And then in 1935, he makes this massive geographic and cultural leap.
Right, so he decides to leave Eastern Europe entirely. How does he actually pull that off, given the political climate of the mid-1930s?
He manages to secure what was called an Aliyah certificate. For those of you listening who might not be familiar with that term, this was an official immigration quota document issued by the British. Because at that time, the British Empire administered the region under what was known as the British Mandate for Palestine.
Okay, got it.
So he is sponsored by his uncle, the poet Kaddish Yehuda Silman, and he immigrates to Eretz Israel. He lands in Jerusalem, stays with relatives in the Beit Hakerem neighborhood, and finishes his studies at a local teacher's college under a director named Ben Zion Dinor.
You know what really stands out to me about this early period is just the total normalcy of it.
It's very ordinary, yeah.
Right, like he doesn't start out as a super spy or an international diplomat. He goes to teach in Yavnel, which was a frontier settlement in the Galilee at the time, which, by the way, is actually where he meets his wife, Avital Brandstatter.
Yes, that's right.
And later, in 1939, he moves to Tel Aviv and teaches at the Gretz Elementary School. I mean, he is grading papers. He is managing a classroom of children.
And that mundane, everyday beginning is the key to his entire operational playbook later on. I mean, think about the foundational skills required to be a good educator. You need clear communication. You need infinite patience.
Oh, definitely.
You need the ability to command a room, de-escalate conflicts, and explain incredibly complex things in a very simple, digestible way. He isn't trained in a military academy from birth, His formative adult years are spent educating. That shapes how he approaches every single crisis for the rest of his life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the pivot from elementary school teacher to covert operative happens pretty fast. The source mentions he joins the Haganah in late 1936. Can you give us a quick primer on what the Haganah was at that specific moment in history?
Sure. The Haganah was a Jewish paramilitary organization operating during the British Mandate period. They were heavily focused on defending Jewish settlements. And because Amir was a teacher in the frontier settlement of Yavnel, he is highly literate and organized.
So he's a natural fit for administration.
Exactly. He is naturally tapped to serve as the communications contact between that settlement and the Haganah headquarters. He even participates in one of their first clandestinely conducted wireless operators courses at a kibbutz in the Upper Galilee.
And that natural progression makes perfect sense. They need someone who can learn technical systems and then basically teach those systems to others.
Right.
So by 1941, he is requested to head up a clandestine Haganah communication course himself. And the setting for this course sounds like something straight out of a spy novel.
It really does. It takes place in the Oriental Bazaar in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to run a covert spy school, you need a solid cover. A bustling, chaotic market filled with noise, shouting vendors, and constant foot traffic provides the perfect acoustic and visual camouflage.
That is so smart.
Yeah, he is operating out of this bazaar, training members of the Moshe Dayan network and working alongside professional wireless experts like Peretz Rosenberg.
And he clearly excels at building these networks because this bizarre operation catches the attention of the highest levels of leadership. He gets invited to the home of Eliyahu Galam, who is the head of the Haganah.
A very significant meeting.
Huge. Galam lays out a massive proposition. He tells Amir they need someone to go behind enemy lines in occupied Europe, posing as a British soldier to reach Jewish communities trapped there. Galam asks him point blank if he's willing to do it. And Amir simply says yes.
What's fascinating here is the massive gap between saying yes to a mission and actually executing it. We so often consume history as a series of rapid, adrenaline-fueled events.
It's like an action movie montage.
Exactly. But for Amir, stepping into the Second World War was a profound exercise in psychological endurance and patience. He doesn't just jump out of a plane the next day. In the winter of 1941, he is sent to British headquarters in Cairo to establish a school for wireless operators.
Who is he actually training down in Cairo?
His trainees are Yugoslav volunteers from Slovenia who had been captured by the British in the Western Desert. He returns to Cairo in February 1942 to command the course and get more specialized training himself. He even completes a parachutist course conducted by the British Inter-Services Liaison Department, or ISLD.
And the source text explicitly notes that ISLD was a cover name for MI6.
Yes.
So Amir is receiving elite British intelligence training.
Which is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But then comes the waiting. He has the training, he has the objective, but the orders to deploy don't come until October 1943.
Wow, that's a long wait.
It is. And to put the timeline into perspective for you, he marries Avital just 1 month before those orders finally materialize.
That is wild. You get married, and 4 weeks later, you are shipping out for a highly classified mission where your chances of survival are entirely unknown. How does he actually get from Egypt to occupied Europe?
It is a grueling logistical journey. He boards a boat from Alexandria to Bari in Italy. In Salerno, he connects with other units from Eretz Israel, handling the transfer of funds to them from the Jewish Agency. By late December, he takes a motor torpedo boat across the freezing Adriatic Sea to the Isle of Vis.
Now, Vis seems to be a major tactical hub in the source material. Why was that specific island so important?
By late 1943, the Isle of Vis was the only island in the Adriatic Sea controlled by Tito's partisans and Allied forces. For context, Tito's partisans were the communist-led anti-fascist resistance movement in Yugoslavia, and they were a formidable guerrilla force fighting the Axis powers.
Okay, so it's a safe haven.
Right. Amir arrives on Vis, joins another MI6 representative, and immediately sets up direct radio contact with the Allied headquarters in Bari.
And he spends 3 months on this island. He connects with commandos and other volunteers passing through. But there is a very specific encounter the text highlights. He meets a group of 200 Jewish refugees from Yugoslavia who had been helped by the partisans to reach the island.
Yeah, that's a critical moment.
He tells them about the forces from Eretz Israel, briefs them on the liberated refugee camps in southern Italy, and personally assists in getting them safely transferred across the water to Bari.
He is leveraging his diplomatic and logistical skills to save lives before his main mission even begins. He is securing transport and managing traumatized civilian populations in an active war zone.
Which brings us to the main mission, which finally kicks off in the spring of 1944. He is promoted to lieutenant, operating under the code name Lieutenant Allen, and on the night of May 12th, going into the 13th, he parachutes into the 4th zone.
Yes.
The text describes this as an area southeast of Ljubljana in Slovenia. It is under partisan control, but it is completely surrounded by German forces.
Dropping into a surrounded pocket of resistance is incredibly perilous. And he doesn't just have a single objective once he hits the ground. He is tasked with a highly complex triple mission.
Okay, break that down for us.
First, the official military assignment. He has to locate a lost British mission that had parachuted in previously, gone completely astray, and lost all radio contact.
So basically a search and rescue mission in hostile territory. What was the second objective?
He needs to overhaul the radio communication systems at the partisans' headquarters. He has to train them in advanced encoding and establish independent wireless contact with Bari so they can coordinate airdrops and troop movements.
Which brings him right back to his roots as a teacher. He is still standing in front of a classroom explaining technical concepts, just doing it in a forest surrounded by the German army.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The environment changed, but the core competency remained the exact same. Finally, there's the third objective, which was the unofficial mission. He is instructed to find fleeing Jews and help them escape to safety.
Wow.
He spends the entire summer of 1944 marching from camp to camp alongside the partisans. He leaves for Bari in September, But instead of staying in safety, he goes right back into Slovenia with more technical equipment. By the end of 1944, he is infiltrated behind enemy lines 3 separate times.
It is an astonishing physical and mental feat, but what I find most compelling is how Amir himself viewed his actions. I want to read a direct quote from the source material, where he reflects on these wartime tasks years later. He says, "We were all of a generation that had been educated to fulfill the missions that were thrust upon us. I do not remember one of our fellow emissaries who looked for publicity or craved a battle. Most of us were young, regular guys. Each and every one of us regarded the mission as a great privilege and unhesitatingly answered, yes."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that quote perfectly encapsulates the mindset of an entire generation of historical actors. They actively rejected the label of superhero. They viewed themselves simply as regular citizens motivated by a deep sense of duty.
Yeah, just doing the work.
Right. He explicitly states they didn't crave the battle. It wasn't about thrill-seeking. It was about stepping up when history demanded it, doing the grueling work, and not seeking the spotlight afterward.
That grounded humility is really evident in what he does after the war. He returns to Eretz Israel and works in the Haganah Intelligence Service, known as the SHAI, in Tel Aviv and Haifa. He even returns to education for a time, serving as the headmaster of the Reali Elementary School in Haifa.
Keeping those educator skills sharp.
Exactly. Then, when the State of Israel is established in May 1948, he is appointed military governor of Acre and the Western Galilee.
And this post-war era marks his transition into what we might call the ultimate project manager. He moves into the senior ranks of the foreign ministry as the head of personnel and administration, and by the summer of 1953, he is handed a logistical puzzle that is almost mind-boggling to consider.
Let's frame this for you listening. Think about a massive corporate merger or a company-wide pivot you have had to navigate at work. You're dealing with hundreds of employees, sensitive data, infrastructure changes, and inevitable communication breakdowns. The stakes are high.
Very high.
Now elevate that to the national level in 1953. Amir is tasked with transferring the entire foreign ministry from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and he does it in a single night.
I mean, imagine executing that move without modern computing, without digital file transfers, relying entirely on physical paper files, manual labor, and early 1950s vehicle fleets.
It's insane.
Every single office, every personnel file, every communication department was relocated, and the ministry was fully functioning the very next day. It is a true testament to the logistical genius he honed managing radio networks and partisan camps during the war.
Following that success, his career in international diplomacy rapidly accelerates. In August 1953, he becomes Israel's consul general to the United Kingdom, moving to London for 5 years with Avital and their daughters, Shulamit and Dahlia. Then, in late 1958, he accepts a posting that carries immense, heavy historical weight. He is appointed head of Israel's legation to Poland.
This is a deeply sensitive and significant period in 20th century history. The source notes that during this era, the full physical evidence of the Holocaust was still being uncovered and cataloged. The sites of the extermination camps were only just beginning to be understood by the wider global public.
Right.
Amir and his diplomatic staff were among the very first Jewish visitors to those camps after World War II to bear witness. During the same 3-year tour of duty, the geopolitical landscape in Poland was shifting. Poland's prime minister at the time, Władysław Gomułka, enabled Jews to leave Poland. Amir had to navigate a diplomatic landscape defined by overwhelming historical trauma while managing the immediate, practical logistics of massive emigration.
It's a role that requires such a delicate balance of empathy and administrative skill. He returns to Israel after Poland, holding several key posts in the foreign ministry. In 1963, he becomes Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion's advisor for Arab affairs.
A very high-level advisory position.
He continues this vital advisory work under Prime Minister Levi Eshkol and even coordinates Pope Paul VI's historic visit to Megiddo and Nazareth in 1964. He serves as Director of Jewish Education in the Diaspora for the Jewish Agency, then Consul General in New York City until 1971.
His career is a steady, upward climb of increasing responsibility. He is consistently placed in roles requiring extreme tact. But his next posting tests every single skill he has acquired since his days as a schoolteacher.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In 1971, he is appointed as Israel's ambassador to Thailand. And in December of 1972, a militant faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, known as the Black September Group, breaches the Israeli embassy in Bangkok. They take everyone inside the building hostage.
It is a terrifying, high-visibility international crisis. Armed militants holding diplomatic staff captive creates a situation where the slightest miscalculation leads to massive loss of life. But the source material highlights an almost cinematic stroke of luck regarding Amir's whereabouts.
Right, he wasn't in the building. Amir and his wife Avital were attending a formal ceremony at the royal palace when the embassy was breached.
Just incredible timing.
Because they avoided capture, Amir suddenly becomes the lead negotiator from the outside. Imagine the absolute composure required for that. Your staff, the people you manage and care for, are being held at gunpoint. You cannot let your emotions dictate your strategy.
And the diplomacy that unfolds is incredible. The King of Thailand becomes personally involved, establishing a firm parameter that no blood is to be shed on Thai soil. Amir has to coordinate with the Thai government, manage communications with his own government back home, and find a way to de-escalate the captors.
And a crucial piece of this de-escalation comes from a completely unexpected source. The negotiation succeeds in large part due to the rare and courageous cooperation of the Egyptian ambassador to Thailand.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to fully appreciate how monumental that detail is, we have to look at the geopolitical reality of 1972. At that time, Israel and Egypt were enemy states.
Right, they had absolutely no diplomatic relations.
None. It was a relationship defined by recent wars and deep hostility. Yet, in this intense, isolated crisis in Bangkok, the Egyptian ambassador steps forward to assist Amir in negotiating with the militants.
Two men representing nations technically at war, collaborating to save human lives. Because of that unlikely alliance and Amir's steady hand guiding the crisis management, the hostages are finally released. Force is never used. Not a single drop of blood is shed.
It is a profound triumph of diplomacy over violence. It proves that even the deepest, most entrenched geopolitical divides can be bridged when level heads prevail and the preservation of human life becomes the shared priority. Amir essentially used the same de-escalation, empathy, and communication skills he developed managing a classroom decades earlier, just applied to a life-or-death international incident.
And that incredible moment in Bangkok sets up the most poetic symmetry of Amir's entire career. He returns to Israel in 1975 and is appointed chief of protocol. In this capacity, he isn't just planning dinners. He is the official face managing the visits of foreign dignitaries, setting the stage for international relations.
The historical payoff here is truly remarkable. In 1972, Amir relied on the back-channel courage of an Egyptian ambassador to prevent a massacre at his embassy. 5 years later, in 1977, as chief of protocol, Amir is the man responsible for handling Egyptian President Anwar Sadat's historic peace visit to Jerusalem, alongside U.S. President Jimmy Carter.
It's amazing. The man who navigated a covert alliance with Egypt to save lives is now literally rolling out the red carpet for Egypt's president to forge a lasting public peace treaty. You could not script a more perfect full-circle moment.
You really couldn't. Following that historic summit, the source notes his final formal diplomatic role was serving as ambassador to Finland from 1979 to 1982. But a man with his drive doesn't just quietly fade away.
No, of course not.
In his retirement, he actively advised the mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kollek. He returned to his educational roots, serving on the boards of the David Yellen Teachers College, the ERAN Mental Health Hotline, and Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. He remained highly engaged until he passed away in 2013 at the age of 97.
So what does this all mean for you listening? When we look back at the grand arc of Rehavam Amir's life, it really is the ultimate study in adaptability. He took the foundational skills of a schoolteacher, the communication, the patience, reading a room, and used them to run covert radio networks, train resistance fighters, relocate an entire government ministry overnight, and negotiate a bloodless end to a hostage crisis.
He never fundamentally changed who he was. He just adapted his core toolkit to whatever monumental task history placed on his desk. This raises an important question for anyone listening. When you are thrust into an unexpected role, perhaps a sudden leadership vacuum at work, a massive shift in your industry, or a personal crisis, do you panic about what you don't know? Or do you rely on your basic foundational skills to adapt and succeed? Amir's life suggests that the skills you use in a quiet, everyday setting are the exact same tools you need when the stakes are infinitely higher. Calmness, clear communication, and a willingness to simply step up and do the work.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the incredible source material we covered today. History is so rarely shaped by people who set out with the grand ambition to be remembered as heroes. It is primarily shaped by the young regular guys, to use Amir's own words, people who simply do the quiet, unglamorous work that is placed in front of them without craving the spotlight or the glory. So, what quiet work are you doing right now in your own life? What foundational skills are you building that might have a much bigger impact down the line than you currently realize? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life of Rahava Mamir. Keep learning, keep adapting, and we will catch you next time.